Everyone, it's Michael again. This video will be talking about installation of IDE, which is the integrated development environment that we'll be making use of to write our code. To write the Java code easily, we need to use the IDE. So in this video, I'll show you the installation and the guide on how to successfully have it on our computer. So first thing first, I'll be dropping this link in the description. So you have to select which version that you have your operating system and pick the right one. So after you actually hit the download button, so you have to pick how you want it, be it zip or whatever, which one that best fits in for what you have. So for the sake of this video, I already downloaded that of the Mac, and I will just be popping up on the installation process. So you have to drag from here to actually have your IntelliJ already here. So I already have it installed, dropped in there. Then you click. Then all you have to do next is wait for it to pop up, and finally you have to go through this agreement and continue. Then boom, you have your IntelliJ, welcome screen where we are going to continue in the next video from here, where you can create your project. We'll start and continue the rest of the video. So the most important part, for this, before we write our first code, is the first thing first. We have to have our JDK installed on our operating system, which I spoke about in the previous video on how we can download, and the link is actually in the description of that previous video where we can have the JDK installed, and also how we can verify if the JDK is actually installed successfully on our computer, on our operating system. And from there, we need to ensure that we have the IDE, which is we're making use of IntelliJ for this tutorial, because it's quite friendly when it comes to Java. And when we have it installed properly, then we are good to go to write our first Java code. So thank you so much for following the steps and going over the guide. If you have any problem, just drop me a comment, and I will pop into it to see how I can resolve it out for you. So if all is good from your end, then see you in the next video. Thank you. Hi everyone, it's Michael again. Before writing our Java code, we need to basically do a few things before jumping into our first Java code, before writing our first Java code. So that's, we need to install the Java development kit. It's quite very important we have this on our operating system before we even, try to install the IDE on our computer, on our system. I will show you how to download and basically give you a few information, depending on the operating system you have on your system, running on your system. And once the installation is done, also I'll show you through the command line how to verify if you have it successfully installed on your operating system. So we'll be visiting this website. I'll be dropping this web link, the URL, on the description of this video, so I can easily click on it and have access to this page. So on this page is an Oracle page where you are going to basically download, the JDK, the version, depending on which version best suit. So because you can decide to upgrade the version at any point in time. The most important thing that you need to have it on your operating system, and it depends on which one you are on. Is it Linux, is it Mac, is it Windows? So you have to click the download button. Then afterwards, the guide is quite very easy when it comes to installation. Then of course follow the guide for the installation. When it's successful and you can see that the installation is completed, Then to verify that you already have the JDK installed on your operating system, you have to your terminal. Go to your terminal. I already have few command line there. So it's either you just say this version and hit the enter button, then it's going to show you the version that it is. Or it might just be just to check the Java version, which is going to show you full details of it, the OpenJDK version that you have, the OpenJDK runtime, and also the OpenJDK server VM. So that's just it when it comes to the aspect of this video. Is basically to ensure that you have your JDK installed on your operating system. See you in the next video. Thank you. Hello everyone, it's Michael again. On this edition of our Java tutorial, we're going to write your first Java program. If this is your first coding, don't worry, it may look confusing at first, but I will explain every line step by step. By the end of this video, you will understand how Java actually runs. So, just to double check, our previous video speaks about how we're going to install the IntelliJ. Also, one of our videos speaks about how we're going to install the JDK, and also we have another video that's highlights what we will be doing at the course of this Java tutorial. So in case if you miss any of those videos, you can actually try to check our playlist to go back and listen to the guide in which we actually have for you there. So continue from on this particular project, which is going to be your first code. To start with, we have our IntelliJ opened, so we're going to click the new project. We're just going to call it Hello World. We're going to call it Hello World. Just something simple. We're going to leave all these other boxes, the way it is, and we're going to go to the create. And of course, it's going to IntelliJ is going to automatically, have some code that's going to be default there. So, but we don't need this code for now because this is basically we're going to explain from the beginning how each of the lines of the code, and we want you to actually be able to write your code, from scratch yourself. So. It's already created a file called the main .java file. So you have to ensure that when we try to create a class here, it's going to be the same name as you have here, the main .java. So we're going to create our class. We're going to create our class here. I think it's already class main. So that's our class, right? We're going to actually have the method that we're going to make it static. Sorry, static void. So you have no worries. I will explain each line of this code after I'm done typing. So because of this code, we're going to be just printing out hello world. So, like I said, at the course of this video, we are going to show you how to basically how to create your Java class, how the main method basically works, how to print out the output using the system out printing line, and also how Java actually runs, on your local machine, basically. So what I'm going to do next is that I'm going to show you how we can run this code, and it's going to print out hello world for us. So We're going to click on the play button icon here that looks like an icon. Is the run button for this particular class. So when we click it, it's going to run for us, and we're just going to wait for a few minutes. You can see we have hello world there. So finally, we have our first Java code, written and printed out. So instead of clicking this button, we can as well go ahead and click the run button from here. It's still the same, and it's still going to show us the hello world. So at this point, I'm going to try and explain each part of the code. So to start with, I'm going to start with the part where we have the public class main. So the word class there is used to define a class in Java. So, and for now, think of a class as a container for your code. The main is the name of the class. Like I said earlier, it's going to be the same name we have our file stored. So, and also the public means this class can be accessed from outside, outside this particular class, actually make it accessible. So we're going to talk about, other like private, the public, and we're going to talk about, other ways actually that we can actually restrict, our class not getting to be accessible by, outside the class itself. And also, I would like to explain the main method here. That means the public static void main string hags. So this line is very important. This is called the main method. Java starts running from the program. Basically at this part, Java basically starts running your program from this point, at the point of this your main method. So the main is the entry point of the program. So when you click the run button, Java looks for that main method first at any point in time. Then afterwards, it's going to check what is inside your main method, which is the system out print line hello world, which is what we printed, the hello world that we printed here. This line prints actually the text on the screen. Whenever we actually write in, so regardless of whatever it is that you write inside the main method, the quotation mark actually, the quotation mark, is going to print it out because that's what we asked it to do, and that's what the system out print indicates. So now the output is definitely going to be for us hello world, and I want to try and explain the curly brackets that we have in there. The curly brackets basically define a block of code, so it's very important that you open and you have your open and a close curly brackets. So the class has its own block, the block, and also the main method has its own block. That means the curly brackets that we have inside this our code. And of course, when we actually run it, it's actually shows our hello world. So permit me to say congratulations, you have actually ended up successfully printing out, writing your first Java code. At this point, I would like to actually, explain a little bit more. So the flow, basically, your main. So now, so that we have a better understanding of what we've been talking about. The simple explanation is the first, you write your Java code in your Java file, then your Java compile it into a bytecode, and that bytecode basically run on the JVM, which means your Java virtual machine. And the flow goes like from for a main Java file, it compiles it, and your main class also, it goes to the JVM, and the JVM basically outputs your whatever it is that you have in your code. This is why Java is a platform independent, and also, like I said, the same code can run on Windows, Mac, and Linux as long as as long as it has the JVM installed in it. So you already finally have your now you have a proper understanding of your first Java program and how Java runs behind the scene. In the next video, we'll learn more about other part, which is the variable and data type, which also allow us to store the information in our program. So subscribe to our channel and continue with the full Java course. See you in the next video. Bye for now. Hi everyone, it's Michael again. On this series of Java YouTube video for beginners, we will be talking about variables and data type. So, if you've watched our previous video, you will understand exactly what we have right in front of our screen, because our last video we were able to print, or should I say write, our first Java code. And the name of the project was actually Hello World, and where we were able to print Hello World on our screens. But this series we're going to be talking about, on this particular playlist, we'll be talking about variables and data and how we can store them. So let's start with variables. Variables basically are used to store data in Java. In this video, we're going to learn the different data types and how to use them properly with simple example. So I will say, don't worry, if you're new, I will make it very easy to understand. So let's start by what is variable. What is a variable? So think of a variable as a container that stores data. Just like you store water in a bottle, we store value in variable also. So for example, if I want to store your age, I can just go, I can just simply, I can use a variable to store the age. So I'm going to show a sample for you of how to, store a variable. So for instance, I want to store your age. So I'm going to be using the ints because they're basically number. I will actually explain this, going forward in the course of this video. So your age, I'm going to say, is equals to 25. So what did I just do? The int is the data type itself. And your age on this part, sorry, I think I made a mistake there. Your age here is what is called the variable name. So, and the 25 is the value stored inside that variable. So, basically, the common data type basically the common data types now, examples are like, the most common data type in Java. Let me put it that way. And we're going to now look at, other data type in Java, going forward in this course of this, we're going to talk about integer, we're going to talk about the the double, we're going to talk about the char, that means the single character, we're going to talk about the boolean, we're going to talk about the string also. So I'm going to show you an example of what a double looks like, because I just showed you an example of what an integer is like. So when you say, like I explained, initially before, the data type is the int, the variable name is the age, and what we're storing inside, the variable is the 25. So the same goes with the boolean. Sorry, the double. So the double basically goes this way. We'll say double, right? For instance, price, which is equals to 19.99. Unlike the integer, the double basically, I will use the word, we can use it to store values that has kind of like a decimal point, so that it's not always a whole number. Let me put it that way. I mean, the term we use in arithmetic, so it's used for decimal value, like money, or for measurement and so on, like that. That basically is not a whole full number. It's not used for a whole full number, unlike the integer that has a whole full number. So the next one we'll be talking about is going to be the char, which is also called the single character. So an example of the chart is this. It's going to also have chart. We're going to call it the grade. We're going to call it equals this, and we'll close it with a semicolon. So basically, this is used to store a single character. Basically, you can notice it uses a single quote, and also we're going to be talking about the boolean. That means this one is what we say the true is either it's going to be true or it's going to be the false. So an example of the boolean is going to be, boolean, let's say is Java fun. We're just going to say true. And basically is used for yes or no or true or false value. That's what boolean are basically used for. I mean, in the course of the video, we'll be going into a few mini project that we're going to be making use of most of this data type, and we'll have proper understanding of them going forward. I'm going to talk about string, which is I think is one of the most common one among them, putting it that way. So when we try to talk about string, what are strings? Basically, an example of a string is, for instance, I'm going to use my name on the course of this video. I'm just going to say Michael, and I'm going to close it with semicolon. So basically, they are used to store text. They are majorly, most of the time they are used for. We always make use of the double quote when we are actually talking about string in Java. So the next part I would like to talk about is basically changing variables value. Yes, you can change variable values. You can decide to declare a variable as a particular value and decide to change it in the course of maybe you're writing your program. I will still talk about a part, the only situation where you cannot change the value of your variables is going to be if you actually make it a constant. This is what we're going to talk about, in the course of this video. But let's just stay focused so that we don't, divert into that part yet. So I'm going to use an example of a variable that we can change the value. For instance, I said, initially, okay, let me just use the int age is equals to 25. So I can decide to say age equals to 30. So what does this mean? It means the value age in the int above, we have already changed it to be 30. If the variable basically here is going to change 30, if we try to print age at this point, the system dot out dot print, I will say age. If we run this method, right? If we run this method, which is going to take a little bit. Okay, it's building. And you can see that instead of saying the value is equals to 25, it gives us as 30. You can see the value here. So you can actually change value. Also, of course, I spoke about printing in the previous video. Printing is basically printing what your value is. The print value basically stores is just to understand that the value is stored in the variable, not actually really in the printing. And also an example I can decide to say, just to make it more to add more to it. So I will also be talking about concatenation. So but I'm going to make use of that here. I can decide to say so that's an example of it. I can say my age is what? That. I can, if I decide to change it to like this, it's still going to add, it's going to change, sorry, it's going to nullify this. Let me use that term and make it 45. So if I try to print this, you can see that my age is 45. So it depends on what you put there. If you decide to make it 12 and you try to print it again, it's still going to give you the same value as 12. So I would like to talk about the common bigger mistakes. You can see it's printing 12 for us there. I'm going to talk about the common bigger mistakes that beginners basically make. I mean, you don't have to really worry about that. Everybody always, because thing is, making mistake is part of the learning process, right? So, but one of the common mistake that developers basically make is having, for instance, their string and forgetting to put the quotes there. Sorry, 1 minute. Having your string and forgetting to put the quote there. I'm sorry. That's okay. That's me using the same value, and it's going to say it's a duplicate. So I'm just going to add one extra name to it, and just saying, for instance, Michael, and that this is going to give us an error because we forgot to make use of it. And if we try to even run this, it's going to give us, it's not going to print out the value for us. Sorry, it's going to print the string for us. It's going to return it back to us as an error, right? You can see it saying cannot find symbol and this, and class main, and it's just trying to let us know where the error is coming from. Or maybe if you decide to do something like this, right? You can see too many characters. That's let's just say even Mike, and if you try to print that also, we're still going to get error. These are the common mistake that a lot of beginners basically make in the course of that. And in most cases, if we find ourselves in this situation, we don't have to panic. We just need to have that understanding that your string basically comes with a double one, and basically you have to try as much as possible not to put the double quotes whenever you're trying to refer to the string, rather than making use of a single quote or not having a quote. So I think now you have an understanding basically of what variables are and data type in Java. Basically, these are basically the building blocks of programming. Let me put it that way. And also in the next video, we'll be talking, we'll learn about what operators are, which basically allow us to perform, calculation. And also we'll make sure, try as much as possible and, make sure you subscribe to this, to my YouTube channel. It's going to be very useful for you because, you get notification as time goes on the latest video on this course, and so that you can be, every single time we release new videos, and you can actually get the notification on the go. Thank you so much for your time. This is Michael again. Stay tuned and see you in the next video. Bye for now. Hi everyone, it's Michael again. In this video, you will learn Java operators step by step with simple real-world examples. We will cover arithmetic operators, relational operators, logical operators, and we'll also practice coding example, common mistake by beginners. And this is really a perfect video for beginners to learn programming fundamentals. So I'm just going to start by explaining what we mean by operators. Operators, they help us, to perform calculations and comparison in Java. In this video, we'll cover arithmetic, the relational, the logical operators with simple real examples. By the end of this video, you will learn and understand Java and how to make decisions when you perform calculations. So I'm going to talk about what really we mean by when we use the word operators. Operators, they are basically symbols that are used to perform operations on the values and variables. Example are add numbers, compare values, checking conditions. Think of operators as the tools that help your program to do work, basically. So to start with, we're going to start with the arithmetic operators, which is the additional operators. I will be showing you on the code parts example of what it really means, and I'll dive into the coding part now. So For instance, if you check our previous video, we spoke about this aspect of the integer, the string, and every other one. So if you actually missed that part when it comes to variables and data type, you can check our previous video. So we'll be making use of our int. Let's say int a is equals to 10, and for instance our int b is equals to 5. So how do we make use of our additional operators when it comes to this aspect? So we want to basically add our int a to int b. So how do we do this? We can decide to just print out our value immediately by just saying system.out.print, and we say a plus b. And if we try to run our method at this point, we are going to see that it's going to give our answers to be 15, which is of course 10 plus 5 is equals to 15. So I would like to dive into the other one, which is basically the subtraction operator. So the subtraction operator basically is more or less like just like our mathematics, like we say minus. So if we decide to say this minus this, and we decide to run our program again, or run our method, it's going to, of course, give us the value to be equals to 5, because 10 minus 5 is going to give us 5, of course. So the next one we're going to be talking about is the multiplication operator. So this one also on the same end, if we decide to remove these and add our multiplication sign there, and we decide to run our method again, and this is going to run through and give us 50 as the total value of it. So talking about our division also, similar to the addition, subtraction, and multiplication, if we decide to remove this part and we had the division sign to it, and we decide to run the method, and this is going to, of course, give us 2 as our result. So the other operator that we're going to be looking at is what we call the modulus operators. Basically, this modulus operator is more or less is what we call the remainder. So it gives the remainder after division. And I'm sure a lot of us must have come across this at any point in time. And this, if we try to run this, it's quite, you can tend to want to mix this up to the division sign, but they are not the same. This is what we call the modulus. It gives the remainder, sorry. It gives the remainder after division. So if we run this now, you see it's giving us to be is 0. And I would like also to say that in most cases, our arithmetic operators are used, in other places, which includes the banking apps, when it comes to, shopping carts, when it comes to salary calculations, game scores, and also, some other applications that actually requires us, doing a little bit of arithmetics and maybe division, addition, and subtraction, whatever it is that it entails at that point in time. So moving from the arithmetic operators, we're going to be talking about what is called the relational operators. Basically, relational operators, they compare values and return true or false, unlike the arithmetic. So an example of what our relational operator looks like is, I will actually clear off this, is, for instance, definitely must have seen something like 10 is equals to 10. So what does this mean? Is asking, is basically doing what is called, is comparing the value. Is saying if we're sure that 10 is equals to this 10. Of course, if we run this, value is going to tell us that this is true. So like I said, it always return true or false, unlike the arithmetic. So you can see it returned the true value for us there. And if we decide to, use what is called, this means not equals to, and of course this is definitely going to give us false, because it means this sign here means not equals to. And you can see that it tells us that value, the result it's printing out for us here is definitely false. So we're going to look into the other relational operators, which we're going to call, which is called the greater than. So we're going to use, of course, we all know greater than is represented by this arrow pointing forward. And if we say if 10 is greater than 10, definitely this is going to tell us that it's false, because of course 10 is not greater than 10. So but if you say 10 is greater than is 0, let's just say for instance, and we decide to run this, and it's definitely going to tell us that this is true, because 10 is greater than 0. So we're going to talk about the less than. If you say 10 is less than 0, of course we already know that this is going to give us a false, because 10 is not less than 0. And if we say let's say 20, and we decide to say 10 is less than 20, this is going to give us true. We're going to talk about the greater than or equals to, which is say greater than or equals to. If you decide to run this is going to be, of course, false, because 10 is not greater than and it's not equals to. Because also we're going to look at less than or less than or equals to. If we decide to say less than or equals to, if we decide to run this part and we run it like this, and of course it's going to tell us is true, because it's less than, even though it is not equals to. So at least one of these is actually true. I'm going to try and talk about where we make use of our relational operators, where they're basically used. They're used when it comes to the aspect of login system, age verification, exam result system, online form, and much more, that requires us to basically check if one is true, one of the condition is true, or if it's false. The other one we're going to be talking about is what is called the logical operators. They basically, what the logical operators are is the combined conditions. And unlike the relational one, we must have come across a situation of, we'll come across it even though if we're yet to, or some of us which already have basic experience or foundation when it comes to other programming languages, they must have make use of any of these operators at any point in time when they're writing their program. But if we are yet to do that, we don't have to worry, because these examples are things we'll be making use of at the course of we writing our code going forward. Okay, so I'm going to try and show an example of what logical operators are. So an example of what a logical operator is for instance, we have int age to be equals to 20, and we have a boolean value that says has ID to be equals to true, and we decide to say we want to check if both we want to check if the condition that we have here. So at this point we want to check if the age is greater than or equals to 18, and has ID. And if we run this method now, it's going to give us true because age is greater than 18, even though it's not equals to. And also, because this condition is true already, right? This condition is true, and this condition, it means we already declare our Boolean value to be true. So it's asking if true and is true. That's what it's saying in layman language. So it means yes, what we are trying to print out here is true. That means the both condition must be true. And that's what the hand value that we have there is for. I mean, this one, just checking if this both condition are basically true. So we're going to talk about the OR operators. So I'm going to show an example of what the OR operator is. The OR operator is basically says that at least one of the condition must be true, unlike the hand operator. So let's say this is less than this, and we have this is what our OR operator is. This is what we use to represent our OR operator. So it's saying age 20 is less than 18. Of course, 20 is not less than 18, but has ID is true, which is checking if one of these conditions are basically true. And of course, one of the conditions is true. So if we run our program, we're going to find it is going to return true for us as our answer. So that being said, we will like to talk about where we basically make use of an example of where we used the hand condition in the real world. So I'm going to use an example of a login system, should I say login example. So I'm going to try and clear this out, and let's say we have a string with username to be equals to admin, right? And we have the string password, that's a bit a typo, to be equals to, let's say 1 2 3 4. And this is an example of what you're going to write as a code when it comes to an example of a login system, and we're trying to check if the username and password are basically correct, because we want to verify if the person trying to log in is the real owner of the account. So we say username equals admin. And password dot equals 1 2 3. Then if we try to print this out, try to run our code now, you see it's true. So let's say for instance I just had maybe an extra 5 here. I will try to print this condition out. It's going to tell us that it's false because 1 2 3 4 is our password, not 1 2 3 4 5. So I would like to, just like I did in a previous video, I like talking about the common mistake beginners make most cases at the point, which is, like I said, it's fine to make mistakes. I mean, that's the point of learning, right? So that we can perfect whatever it is. So, but an example of what a lot of new beginners do is they use conditions like A equals to B, So if A is equals to B is basically not making any sense. So rather, you're just saying A, you're assigning A to be B. So, but that's not what we want to check. What we want to check is we want to be sure that if value A, or let's say the variable in A is equals to B. So rather than doing that, we just add this to it. So it's showing this red because I'm not assigning it to any like I'm not I don't have a variable for that particular stuff. But these are one of the example that I basically like to show to let them know that there is difference between the single equals to and the double equals to. Because when you use the single equals to, it means you're assigning the value. But when you're using the double equals to, is basically what is called the compare value. And also, an example of the common mistake that beginners do make is basically asking to use the division value like this. So they will have something like this is error. This is going to cause an error because if we try to run this now, it's going to give us an error. You see, it's going to give us an error because this is not correct. Another one that I would like to point out is try to talk about few other things that we need to look at. I would like to talk about the ability for us to practice exercise as we go forward in this course, because a lot of situations we just learn this, they are real world situations we will need to implement it. So I will say this, pause the video and I'm going to give you an exercise that you try this yourself so that you can use it to practice on your own at the point we're going on this course, so that we can ensure that we can track our progress as we go forward. So I will give this int x to be 8, int y to be equals to 4. So try as much as possible to use our operators, our comparison, our arithmetics, and try to predict the output before running the code and see whatever it is. You can start to use the plus, the greater than, you can try to use the comparison and try to see how you can practicalize most of the things we've learned in the course of this video. So now that we basically have an understanding of what arithmetics, relation, and logical operator are in Java, and we basically know that these operators are essential for writing real-world program, because we're definitely going to use this at our real program. So in the next video, we will also learn we'll learn about if-else statement and how Java makes decision. These are the points where we would start making use of our our arithmetic, relational, and logical operators, so that we can basically have an understanding of the real world scenario that we'll be making use of. So subscribe and continue with this our full Java course, so that we can get the notification on the go and we can keep on track when it comes to getting the latest video that have been released from us. Thank you so much for your time. If you have any comments, if you have any question, just drop it in the comment section. I will be right here to respond to you. Don't forget, subscribe, like, and share this to someone who needs it. Thank you so much. See you in the next video. Bye for now. Hi everyone, it's Michael again. In this video, you will learn how if statement works in Java step by step. We will cover what is an if statement, how condition works, if, else if, and else statement. We'll also cover a real world example and a common beginner's mistake. So I'm going to talk about if statement and what basically it entails or it looks like. If statement basically allows your program to make decisions, just like human beings make their own decision every day. Program also make and decide what to do based on the condition that they have. So in this video, we will understand how condition works in Java using simple and real world example. To start with, I want to try and highlight what we mean by if statement. An if statement basically checks a condition, and if the condition is true, Java will run the code inside that block. So when you say block, if you remember in our previous video, I spoke about the curly brackets. So I'm going to show you an example of what an if statement looks like. So in our code, say if. Can you see the word if? So we'll put our condition. Our condition is meant to be here, and of course, I'll say the block of code. The block is going to be here. So this is where we write our code, and this is where we're going to write it, and whatever it is that we want to execute will be put inside this curly bracket. And a simple example that we're going to make use of here, I'll try and make use of an example. The age is equals to 10, and our condition that we want to try and do, I have here what we want our program to do. It's going to check if the age is greater equals to 18, and if this is true, then it should go ahead and print out this condition for us. It should just say you are adults, right? And of course, this statement is gonna be true because 20. So it's going to be true because 20 is greater than 18. So right now we can see you are an adult. So that actually basically verifies that this condition that we have here is true, and is simply we're able to run that code as a result of that. So just a brief explanation, or again just to iterate. Here the Java basically checks if the age is greater or equals to the 18, and since 20 is greater than 18, the message is going to definitely print out. So the next part I'm going to talk about is the if else statement. So what the question is, what if this condition that we say, for instance, if you remember the other time, I mistakenly had it 10. So what about if this condition is false? Let's say, for instance. So what happens? So for instance, if you try to run this and it's false, right? What will happen by the time you run this? It's not going to give us any value. Why? Because the age is 10 is not greater than 18. So it expects to, what will happen? What if this condition is not true? And that's why we have the else. So if we say else, what should it do? We're just going to say you are a child. So if we try to run our code again, what happened? It's going to show us that you are a child because 10 is basically less than and is it's not greater than, that means it's less than 18 and it's not equals to 18. We'll also try and look at the condition of the other condition that is called else if statement. Now, I know that sounds a little bit uh, sounding a little bit difficult, but it's not. Just let me do a brief explanation. So we already spoke about the if and else statement. There's a condition called else if statement. Sometimes we need kind of multiple condition, and that's why we have the else if statement. That's the point where it is so useful. So I'm gonna try and just change what I have here so that we can just go into something different. I'm gonna say if the mark is 75, right? And I say the mark is greater than or equals to 90, we'll say print grade A, right? And we have our else if statement, which is just going to be max is greater than or equals to 70, right? What happens? So I would like to clear this off just to make sure my code is a little bit easy to read. We're gonna say grade B, right? And also we can just add our else statement, which is just gonna be finally system output, we just say you fail. So if we try and look at this, what basically it does is it checks the condition. The Java basically checks the condition from the top to the bottom, and once a condition becomes true, the remaining condition are basically skipped. That's just it. Once you check the first condition and it's true, that means the first condition, which is if the mark is greater than or equals to 90, if it is true, it's going to skip the other part that says else if and else statement. And if it is the else if that is true, it skips the else statement like that. So, and basically we actually can use this in real world situation, like for instance our login form also, which we actually did initially. We can use our if statement. If you recall, we did something like this in our previous video where we spoke about a login form that we have the admin, we have the string password to be equals to 1, 2, 3, and we can use our if else statement here just in case. So for instance, when we have a situation where this user's name or password, if it is not correct, what do we have to show? How do we know that it's not correct? How do we tell the users that, hey, this is what is going on? So rather than just having a blank screen, so we'll just say username, let's say equals admin, and the password that equals 1, 2, 3, 4, and we are saying that the system should print out for us welcome or we say login successful. And if S, the condition is not true, we just say the system should output invalid credential. Okay. Right. So if you print this, if you try to run this, it's definitely going to tell us that the login is true, is successful. So let's say, for instance, I put S here and I try to run this again. What happened is going to tell us that invalid credential. So one of the real life scenarios that we can implement this. And also I would like to talk about netted if statement. What can we call a netted statement? You can also place an if statement inside another if statement. Yes, that's what netted if statement is. So it's basically placing an if statement inside another if statement. I'll show you an example of what I'm talking about. So let's say, for instance, I'm going to take this out and we'll decide to put another if statement and see. So, but the if statement, both conditions must be true. In this scenario, we will have to say this. So we'll say, I'm going to use a boolean value just to hide this. Boolean value to has logged in to be equals to true. So I'll just say if as logged in. Yeah, I will just say I'll copy this so I don't have to type all over again. And I'll say welcome Marco. Okay, here we go. So if we try to run this method, we're definitely going to there's something not right there. Okay, yeah, I did not remove this part, and yeah, it's going to tell us welcome Michael. That's what a netted if statement is. Both conditions must definitely be true. So talking about the common beginner mistake, I spoke about it before. We making use of a single equals to instead of a double one. Also, I would like to talk about the part of missing the curly brackets. Missing the curly bracket is quite very important. If you have, always look out for, it's not even only beginners. I think even programmers sometimes, out of maybe they get overwhelmed typing and doing all the whole stuffs, they forget to have it, their curly bracket closed at the end of their code, or at the end of whatever it is they want to put into their block of code. So don't ever forget to close your bracket. Also the semicolon, where it's needed, when you needed to end your code or line of your code, you have to try as much as possible to put it at the end of your code. So anyways, I would like to say, just like I did in the previous video, pause this video, try some few exercise so that I can be able to test your ability. I'm going to just give you an exercise for you to work on. I'm going to say, this is going to be about temperature. Let's say temperature is equals to 30. You can try to use the if statement and if and s statement to check if the temperature is greater than or less than or equals to. Else you should check it if the temperature is greater than 20, or just try and particularize, try and predict the output before you run the program. That's the most important thing. So I can check your ability to that you're actually you're following this video and you're actually on track when it comes to your ability to write the code without having to look at the example we've done so far. So I will actually have to say this, how Java basically evaluates condition. Java evaluates condition as either it is true or it is false, and it is called the Boolean logic. So of course we already tried the Boolean, we spoke about the Boolean logic at the point where we check if, for instance, if 10 is greater than 5, of course it's going to give us true. If we actually says 10 is less than 5, of course it's going to give us false because 10 is not less than 5. So now you understand how if statement works in Java. This is one of the most important concepts in programming because it actually allows your application to make decisions. In the next video, we will learn about loop and how to repeat tasks automatically. So subscribe to this video, continue practicing, don't stop, keep moving, and also if you have any question, drop a comment, like the video, share it to someone that you think needs this video, and I will see you in the next video. Take care and thanks for your time. Bye. Hi everyone, it's Michael again. In this video, you will learn how loop works in Java step by step. It's basically a beginner-friendly example. We'll cover what are loops, for loops, what we know as while loops, do while loops, and we're also going to cover some aspect of real-world example, and also we'll talk about the common mistake by beginners. So this video is perfect for beginners learning Java programming. So let's start by giving an intro into loop. So we say loops basically help us to repeat tasks effectively. So let's just imagine that we're printing something up to like 100 times manually. That will be much more frustrating if you actually look at it from the angle. And this is one of the major reasons why loops basically in Java can help us repeat these tasks automatically instead of having to do it manually every single time. So in this video we're going to learn about for loops, we're going to learn about while loop, and we're going to learn about do while loop with real world example and we'll actually we'll be able to actually get a clearer picture of what I'm talking about when we go ahead in our examples. Also, I would like to define what a loop is. A loop can simply be defined as used to repeat a block of code multiple times. An example, we can use it to print numbers, we can use it to print a process record, we can use it to repeat tasks automatically. Basically, we'll say that loop saves time and reduces repetitive code. I'm going to give you an example of what a for loop looks like. So we'll go back to our code. So we always start a for loop with the word for, and it only comes as I use this word, the initializer. So in the initialization, let me put it that way, the condition that you want and the update. So let me try and make it look okay, good. So what do we mean by the word initialization? So it means the starting point of whatever it is that we want to loop. And of course, the condition means it checks if the loop should continue or not. And why the update is basically what I explain as the changes the value, and every single round. I mean, the changes in the value on every single round. That means every single loop. What are the changes that you want it to basically, do? I will be showing a real world, simple example, which is going to go like this. We say int high is equals to 1, right? And we say when high is less than or equals to 5. And what do we want us to do? What does we want to do every single time? We want it to basically loop through and add every single time. Sorry, I used a capital letter there. I'm supposed to use a small letter. And we can say system.out.print line and high. I will close it. If we try to run this method, right, we'll discover that there's going to be a loop from 1 to 5. You can see that we say where we want it to start from. We want it to be, you want that 1 to be less than or equals to 5. And that means it's going to be within the range of 1 to 5. And what do we want it to do? We want it to keep looping this 1 every single time. It's going to be adding extra 1 to it every single time, the loop goes on. All right, so that's our real world example of what loop, of what the for loop is about. We're going to talk about the while loops. So, while loop is basically, we'll say it's a while loop runs as long as the condition remains true, right? It runs as long as the condition is true. So we're just going to try and give a real world example of what a while loop is. So we'll say while condition, here we go. So this is how it goes. So unlike the for loop, it's basically when it runs as long as the condition is true. So, and we're going to actually use the int, my bad. Okay, yeah, let's go. I is equals to 1, right? So our condition is going to be high, which is 1 is less than or equals to 5. So what do we want it to do? We want it to print high every single time that high is equals to high is less than or equals to 5. So should I use the word in a simple term? It means our high has been declared as to be 1. And as long as our high, right, when it goes through the loop, as long as the high is less than or is equals to 1, you can keep printing it. But the moment high, that means which is 1, is, for instance, let's say the last iteration is 5. If it is going to be plus 1, it means it's not going to print it out. It's just going to stop the loop. So that's why I said, as long as the condition is true, it will keep printing. But if it's not true, it's going to stop its printing. So we're going to say high, which of course we declare it as 1. It should keep looping it through every single time. So I'm going to try and run this again. And you can see, similar to the for loop, is still, it prints out our 1 to 5 for us. So that's a real world example of what a while loop is. So, and also, we have what is called this infinity loop warning, right? So the infinity loop warning, basically, this is because this can actually come up as a result when the condition never becomes false. That's what it, because we have to try as much as possible to be careful. A scenario of that is when we have something like, we just put a boolean that says true. Sorry, that says true, and maybe we put something like let me just say hello world, or let me just say hello, right? And we kind of like print. This is going to be an infinity loop. You can see if you look at this bar, it keeps printing and it keeps printing and it keeps printing and it keeps printing, keeps printing. It's going to be an infinity, and this is not going to be a good one. We have to try as much as possible to avoid such situation. I have to stop it there, because you can see that it's going to keep printing hello, on and on and on to infinity. So we have to try as much as possible to avoid such, loop. The next loop I would like to talk about, which is the third loop, right, is going to be do while loop. So what does the do while loops look like? I'm just going to show an example of it. And okay, let me just quickly do an explanation of it. So the do while loop basically executes at least once before, checking the condition. It's kind of tricky, because unlike the for loop and the while loops, which always check if the condition is true before going ahead with the iteration, the do while loop execute at least once. It's going to execute it once first, and then it's going to check if the condition is true, or not. I mean, we have some scenario where we want to do such, and but on a very rare occasion do we have that, because a lot of people basically make use of they make use of the for loop more than the other type of loop. But it depends on what you're working on your project. You can actually determine the one that best fit or suit what project you're working on. So this is what the do while loop looks like. So it's going to first of all do this first. It's going to do this first, right? For instance, you're going to say, let me use an example. Int I equals to 1. So why is still checking this condition? It's going to do this. It's going to start the print. Right? I don't know why I keep putting the capital letter though. It's alright. So, and it's going to say while I is less than or equals to 5. And yeah, if we try to print this, so before it checks this condition, it's going to actually do this first before even trying to think about the condition itself. So those are the differences between the do loop, the major difference between the do loop, the for loop, and the while loops. So I'm going to actually look deep into the difference between the while and do while loop. So like I said initially, it's the while loop basically, it prints nothing because the condition is going to be false. If the condition is false, it's not going to print anything. But why the do while loop, right? The do while loop basically, this would actually print once, because the do while loop executes before checking the condition. I'm just going to show a quick example so it doesn't just look like we are not looking into it. So let's say this. This is going to be, I'm going to use this one as 10. And the do while loop is going to say this, print this, and do this. It's going to print this, right? It's going to remove this, and before doing this, so high is equals to 10, then it should do print high, and why the condition is going to be this. So if we try to run this, You can see it printed what the value high is first before going ahead to even check if high is less than or equals to 5. And we all know that 10 is not less than or equals to 5. But at first, it did this part also. It did the do. The do was called first before even checking, the condition. And that's one of the major difference between a do, a while, and do while loops. So I just showed you a real world example, and I will actually talk about an example of this loop that I've actually been explaining in the course of this video. So in a real world situation, we use it at the ATM example. So we're going to use an ATM example for it. An ATM basically, an ATM menu, it keeps repeating until the users exist. That's what it does. It keeps looping and looping till the users exist. And an example also of this in a real life, in a real world situation is our game. So the game basically uses the loop to continually run the game every single time without stopping. It keeps looping it. Also, an example is our login attempt. So the system may, some situation, the system may actually allow you to repeat the login attempt using the loop, every single time you try to make an attempt to log in. So I would like to, I love to, pinpoint this part where, the common beginner mistakes, is some situation, you actually have the infinity, what's it called? The infinity loop. Sometimes you have when you forget to update, forget the updates. That means you create an infinity loop. That's a scenario of you creating an infinity loop. When you have a wrong condition, that means the condition is incorrect, so the loop is never going to run. I'm going to give an example of that. I think I already showed an example of the infinity loop, where you have a situation where you have a loop in this manner where you say for int I equals to, let's say, 1, and you say I is greater than or equals to 5, right? And you're asking it to iterate to a loop. In this situation, you're not going to get it to run, because we know that high is not greater than and is not equals to, none of those conditions are true. So we don't expect this code to actually run. So also I would like to talk about it this way. At the end of each video, I try as much as possible to give us an exercise that we can actually run so that we can actually practice on our own and see how we're catching up so far in the video. I will ask us to actually look at practice this for loop. We can try as much as possible to play around, change the figure. For instance, you could say for int I to be equals to 1. I will say high, let's say, is less than or equals to 10. I will say high is this. So that's the iteration. Keep looping, and we can decide to print whatever it is that we want to print out at this point. But let's try as much as possible to have a proper understanding of our loop to try and test the infinity loop that I spoke about, or maybe when we try to put a condition that is not true, to check if whatever it is that we are doing is actually right. Of course, you can try the one that is true, the one that is false, and of course try the ones that is infinity, so that we can actually try our capacity when it comes to our understanding in the video. So we also have, I would like to have this as a bonus, we also have what is called a netted loop. Like if you remember when we're talking about the if statement, if and else statement, or we're talking about the else if statement, I spoke about what is called a netted if statement. So that means we also have inside the loop, we have what is called a netted loop. That means loop can actually exist inside another loop. I'll show an example actually. So let's say, for instance, we have a situation where we say hi is equals to this, and we say hi is greater than is less than or equals to 3, right? And we can decide to have another loop inside this loop. We can say for, you will actually do this a lot when it comes to Java, the netted loop, because in most careers, when you want to try and go for interviews, when you try to pick it as a career path, in most situations, they will actually ask you to write a code, and in most cases, you have to make use of this part of, this netted loop, where j is less than or equals to 2, where j, you look through j, and instead of just rewriting it again, I'm just going to copy this and put this here. And we'll say we should print out I plus. This is called concatenation. I think we're going to talk about that at the course of this video, so you have no worries. And if you try to print this now, you can see that this is what is called a netted loop, and this is one of the things you have to make use of at the long run when it comes to writing your program, or you have a project that you work on. This will be very, very useful for you, going forward. And I think now this is gonna, this is gonna be the end of the video. I'm sure we now have an understanding of how loop works in Java. Loops are one of the most powerful tools in programming because they automate repeated tasks. So you can just imagine you having to write all this loop, manually yourself. You're gonna get overwhelmed. So the loop is there to actually help you out in repeating your tasks. And in the next video, we will learn about arrays and how to store multiple values, effectively. Subscribe to this video, follow, try the practice, the sample code that I said we should try and practice on, and don't forget subscribe, and subscribe, because you're gonna be getting the notification on the go whenever we post new videos. So see you in the next video. Take care of yourself. Thanks for your time. Bye. Hi everyone, it's Michael again. On this series of Java tutorial for beginners, we're going to be talking about array. So in this video, you will learn how Java array step by step, and we're going to have understanding of what arrays are. We're going to know how to create arrays, how we can basically access arrays elements, how we can update the array values. Also, we're going to look into looping through an array, and also we'll try and check real world example of what an arrays are. So like I used to say, this is a perfect video for beginners, for you to learn Java programming step by step. If you have missed any of our previous video, you can just click on our channels and actually look through the playlist that's explain Java from the beginning, and you can follow our video through. Now, so I'm going to actually explain what array does and how. So array basically how to make use of it. So array basically allows us to store multiple value in a single variable. So I will use this as an example. I'll say, imagine storing 100 student score using a separate variable. For instance, having something like int score 1 and is equals to 10, and you try to try another score to be equals to, let's say, score 2 to be equals to 20, and you keep doing it like that, and just imagine how messy that's going to actually be, and it's not going to be efficient enough for us when it comes to that. So but with arrays, Java gives us a cleaner and smarter way to manage multiple values. So in this video, we'll learn how to create and use array in Java step by step. So I'll start by explaining what is an array. An array is a collection of multiple value stored under one variable name. So I just made an example here, having something like the score 1, the score 2, and we have maybe, let's say, 100 students that we have to register the score. That's going to be very hectic for us and messy, right? But with an array, we can have this to be, we can call it scores, have our curly bracket and have, for instance, 10, 20, 30, and so on like that. And we'll be able to, store, the scores there. So I'm going to try and explain, what each of these basically means. So we can actually see that this is well organized, right? So what is the int with the square bracket? The int with the square bracket, this means an integer array, and the value are actually stored in that curly bracket that we have right there in front of us. So I'm going to start by explaining how to create an array. First, we have to what is called direct initialization. This is what I just did here, where we have this int, the square bracket, scores. This is what is called the direct initialization. Like I explained, this is the integer array, and this is the variable name, and these are the value that is going to be stored inside this array. And of course, the next step, the method 2, we have to also create, we have to create it first and add our value, later going forward. So I'm just going to use an example also. Let's say int this, and let's say numbers equals to new int, let's say 5. So what does this really means? Like I said, this is an integer array, and this is the variable name, and we're basically saying this array can actually this array can only create a space for 5 integers. So of course, we already explained in the previous video what an integer is basically. So if, for instance, we want to add value, like I said you have to create it first and add, add later, add the value later to it. For instance, I want to add values to this. All I just need to do is number this 0. I will explain what the 0 means. I'd like to make my code a little bit cleaner. So saying 10, for instance, I'm just gonna say numbers this 1, okay, and equals 20, and we're gonna actually have it this value are basically going to be stored inside this array. So what does this 0 mean? Is the index. So index does not start from 1, it starts from 0 when it comes to array, and it's going to be 0, 1. And if we try to, for instance, try to see what value that we have inside these numbers, all we just need to do is, let's say, system out print line, I'll say numbers 0. If we try to run this, it's meant to give us 10 because that's the index of it. Of course, that's 10. If you decide to make it 1, it's going to print for us 20, and that's 20 right there. So I'm sure we actually understand that aspect of the how it's been arranged. So we're going to talk about assessing array value, which is what I just spoke about just now. What I just showed you right now is we are able to assess the value inside this array numbers with starting from the index, which is 0, and we're able to the next one, which is 1, because we only start from 0 to 1. It depends on how many number of values that we have inside, numbers of elements that we have inside the array. So also we're going to talk about modifying the array value. Yes, you can modify an array value because I can see here there's nothing that is making it like a constant or final, so we can be able to modify whatever the value might be. For instance, here we already know that 0 is 10, 1 is equals to 20. We can decide to say system, let's say out, let's say in print line, I'm just gonna say, for instance, I can say number, let's say this, for instance, 1, right? We know it's 20. I can decide to make it 100 and try to print it. So keep in mind, I'm still printing 1, 1. So we're going to see this first one is going to be 20 and this is going to be 100. So let's try and run this. Yeah, we can see that the first one is 20 and the next one is actually 100. So inside the array, we can actually modify what the value is. So my next part is going to be, I'm going to talk about looping through array. So I will say this, loops works perfectly with arrays because we're going to be able to, get each value that we have inside the array. I'm definitely very sure we spoke about loop in our previous video, and this is one of the examples that we're going to be making use of. This is a practical real world scenario that we're going to be making use of loop. So I'm going to be using these numbers. I'm going to loop through and be able to get the value that is in, this scores. I'm going to be able to loop through and get all the values that are there. So keep in mind, we're going to make use of for loop here. We're going to say int high equals 0 when high is less than scores dot the length. That means when the length, when is 0, so what it means here is that we already know high is equals to 0. When is 0 is less than the length, that means the number of what we have inside our array. That means the 10, 2, 1, that's 3. So that means, of course, we know that 0 is less than it, so it should loop through it. And we now say high should loop through it, and we will now go ahead and print it out. And we're going to say scores brackets high, and that's just going to print out. So what we just want to do is I want you to look through the scores here. So it's just going to print for us 10, 2, and 3 on, it's going to look through all the value that we have there. So I'm just going to try and comment this out, because I just want this part to be out. Now we can see that it just looked through what we have inside here, and we're able to get all the value inside that particular array. So we also have what is called enhance for loop. So I'm going to explain what enhance for loop, an example of an enhance for loop. So we have something like for, let's say, int score, we now say scores, okay, I'm right. Yes, so scores, right? Now say for system dot out dot print so we are basically trying to look through and this is what is called the enhanced loop. I will try to comment this out and try to run this part. You can see that's another form of loop. It's called the enhanced looping. So this is called an enhanced loop or for each loop. Let me put it that way. So and it's cleaner and it's much more easier to read. Let me put it that way. Unlike it depends on anyone that you prefer to write the one that you think is much more easier. But I think it's just what speaking about when it comes to talking about loop. So like I said, the real world example is the student's course. We can actually use these when it comes to shopping cart prices. I want to look through the prices. It can be double. You can use it. I just use an integer for an example. You can decide to make it as a table. You can try to use it, with string. It depends on the data type that you want to make use of. So I would like to talk about the common beginner mistakes. So in most cases, when you use the invalid index, you might get the wrong value when it comes to that. So if the array has 3 elements, this can actually cause an error. Let me put it that way. You can see that we said in that place, we said the hint number is 5. So if you have more than 5 inside that particular if you have more than 5 elements in that particular array, it's going to actually cause errors. It's going to return an error for you. And also sometimes some people forget about the size of the array. Sometimes these are the common mistake that a lot of beginners basically make use of. At the end of my video, in most cases, I love giving I always give the advice that we should pause the video, take our time to do some exercises and practice. If we are able to do that, that is going to make us be more efficient. I will have greater understanding of what we've been learning so far. And if there is any issue that you encounter at the course of you trying to practice, just drop your comment on this video. I'm going to get to respond to you, and we can actually solve this basically together. So I would like to actually close this video by telling you how arrays work internally. Arrays basically store value in a continuous memory location. This makes accessing of the elements more faster. And also I would actually like to close this particular video by saying let's try and practice more. Let's try and ask questions. If you encounter any kind of issue, drop your comment, subscribe to this video, and so that you can get any video that we actually get to post on the go and you won't miss any of those. So now I'm sure we have a better understanding of what arrays and how they work and how they can work in our real life situation. So in the next video, we're going to learn about method and how to organize reusable code in Java. Subscribe and continue with our course. See you in the next video. Thank you. Bye for now. Hi everyone, it's Michael again. In this video, we're going to learn one of the most important concepts in Java, which is methods. So we're going to talk about methods and what it helps us with. It helps us actually with organizing our code. It helps us to avoid repetition, making program easier to maintain, building reusable functionality. Also, we're going to cover what methods are, how to create method, how to call method, and also we're going to talk about parameters and arguments. We're going to talk about return values and real world example. This video, like I would say, is perfect for Java beginners. So stay tuned as we're going to dive into each part when it comes to method. So I'm going to use this as a form of intro into what method are. So just let's imagine writing the same code 20 times in your program, and that would be a little bit frustrating, right? So it's going to be difficult for us to maintain, and of course, we're not going to be 100% perfect when it comes to typing, so we're error prone. So this is exactly why Java basically provides methods. So methods help us to organize our code and make it reusable. In this video, we're going to learn how to create and call method with practical example. What is a method? A method is a block of code that performs a specific task. Instead of writing the same code repeatedly, you write once inside a method and you call it whenever you needed it. Keep in mind, I spoke about in the beginning of this playlist, I spoke about dry. That means don't repeat yourself. I spoke about one of the major power of Java, which is object-oriented programming. So method is basically what we create inside our classes. That means the function we create in our classes is what methods are. I'm also going to trying to explain much more further how or real life situation or scenarios that we can actually explain what method is. So think of a method like a coffee machine. You press a button and it performs a task. And you don't actually really need to rebuild the machine every time you want to make a coffee. You already have the method there. All you just need to do is just call the method and it's going to perform whatever function that we have, within that particular method. So I will use this word, without method, we're going to end up having a repetition and writing our code over and over again. If it has to be 100 times, that means we're going to write it over and over again. I'm going to show an example of code where there is no method and the one that is method. So just imagine we want to say print.out, using an example, and we're saying, hello world. Let me say right, and we have to print these. We have to write these, more than once. I'll have it like this. Just imagine the bottleneck this is going to cost us if we have to write this. But let's look at it in a scenario of having just one single method that is going to have this. So for instance, I'm going to actually create a method and I'm going to call it, I'm going to make it a static method. I'll call it hello world. And I'm just going to paste this here, right? And inside here, I'm just going to clean up this and just say, hello world. Hello world. Then hello world. So instead of we having to write this hello world all over, I can already have the method. Keep in mind, don't stay focused on the fact that maybe it's just one line. We can have thousands of lines of code, depending on what we want this function to actually perform. And just imagine having about 50 lines of code here, and we have to rewrite it in where we have the hello world, making it, let's just say 50 in this hello world. That means we're going to write it like 50 in 3 places. That's going to be like 150 lines of code. But instead of it, we already have it created inside this, function here, which is like our method here. So like I said, it's a method because it's a function inside, our class here. And if we try to run this, now you can see it's saying hello world, hello world, hello world. So this is one of the good parts of having our method. So we're going to talk about method structure and an example of what a method structure is. So because a lot of us will be wondering what we wrote in this part where we have the hello world. So I'm going to break it down a little bit for us. So the static here basically allow us to call this method without having to create an object. I repeat, it allows us to call this method without creating an object. I know a lot of us will say, what do you mean by creating an object? Instead of calling it this directly, we will have to create it as an object before being able to call it. But because we have it as static, we are able to call it directly without creating an object. So the next thing is going to be this void, which means the method does not need to return anything. It doesn't need to return anything. It's just going to tell us the value that we have here, which is hello world. Then the word hello world, this is the name of the method that we have here. And I know the question is, what does this double cycle, the parenthesis basically means it basically holds the parameter if needed. The parenthesis holds the parameter if needed. And of course, we already know the curly brackets contain the code that we're going to be executing inside the method. So we're going to talk about also calling a method I'm just going to say from within this class to start with. So the part where we said hello world is the part where we call the method itself. So that means this tells Java to execute that method at that point in time. So whatever it is that we have as that method, it's just going to execute it. Then also we're going to look into method with parameters. So method basically becomes much more useful when they actually accept inputs, or like just re-echoing what we have inside the method. It can actually be much more useful when it accepts inputs. I'm going to show you an example of what I'm talking about. So I'm going to have something like let me just do this. I'll call it greet, and it's going to receive some input. I'll call name, right? So I'll say hello. Let me just pull this out. This is concatenation. I'm just going to say name, and that's it. Yes, I know I'm yet to define what names are. So what I will just do is I'm going to take this off, and I'm going to call the greet. Is expecting me to use, I'm just value to pass a value to it. I'm going to say Michael. Sorry. So what does this mean? It means we are calling this part, right? And we're sending Michael, which is the name here, and we're expecting it to output hello Michael. So like I said, this method is basically receiving a value and uses it inside the method. So what does it mean is that this greet, which is the method, we are sending Michael into this part, and we're going to say, instead of just hello, or we see that it says a name, right? It's just going to tell us hello Michael. Let's just try and run this so I can have a better understanding of what I'm talking about. Now, can we see that it just says hello Michael? And of course, let me just put the space there. So if we run it again, it's just going to say I just want it to look more cleaner. So you can see the space in there. So hello, Michael. So we also have something that is called, we only have what is called multiple parameters. So we can, okay, I'm saying multiple parameters. So that means it can have different data type. Let me put it that way. Of course, we spoke about data type previously. So an example of the one that is going to have a multiple parameters are going to be, I'm just going to say students. Yeah. And I'm saying the name, I'm still going to use the name, and I'll say int age. Sorry. So that means it's multiple. I'm just going to say name to be this. Then I'm going to say name is, let me just see. And I'm going to add it. And my age is, sorry. So I'm just going to put, right. So by the time we're going to pass our parameter here, all we just need to do is we're going to say students, and we're going to pass, for instance, Jonah, and we're going to pass another one, which is going to say 12. And if we try to run this, I'm going to comment this out, and we run this now, it's going to say name is Jonah and my age is 12. So yes, name is Jonah, and I want to make it a little bit cleaner. Okay, so, and my age, Jonah, yeah, and my age is 12. So that's an example of multiple parameters. Also, we're going to talk about method with return value. So sometimes we don't just want to perform an action. We want the methods to actually give us what is called a result, rather than just performing an action. An example of that is going to be, I'm going to have another static int add int a, int b, sorry, and we're going to say return a plus b, right? Okay, so in this part, we're just going to, we want to add to our parameter, we want it to return, a value rather than just, we want to basically, let me use the word perform. We don't want to actually perform an action. We want it to, the methods to actually give us a particular result. We're going to do a little bit of an arithmetic here. So I'm just going to say, I have to close that part, and I will just say int result equals add, I'll say 10, 20. So it means this is going to be A is going to be 10, 20, and of course it's going to give us 30. So if we say you should print this out, I'm going to have to copy this part so that I don't have to type it all over again. So it's going to print this out, and I'm going to clean up this, and I'm just going to say you should print out the results. And if we try to run this method, what do we have now? We're going to have it as 30. So that is an example of what we call method with return value. So I would like to talk about the real world situation that we can make use of um, this scenario. We can make it for calculators, and this is actually, we can also use it for business application when it comes to calculating of tax or discount. And also we can use it to, when it comes to reduce duplicate code. We can use it to improve our readability. This will make it more simple when it comes to trying to debug our code, because that's another very important part of being a programmer. You have to be able to debug code when there is error, where the problem is coming from, or whatever it is that you're implementing, if it is going well or if it's working out the way it's supposed to be. And also to build large application, and also it will help us when it comes to improving maintenance. And I would like us to talk about common beginner mistake also, is forgetting the parentheses. Also, when we miss the part where we have to return, to make use of the return statement, and having the wrong data type. Sometimes you are supposed to pass a string, you decide to pass an integer, you're supposed to pass an integer, you decide to pass a double, vice versa, like that. These are one of the major, common mistakes that we actually make as a beginner. So also, I would like to talk about our practice. Let's try as much as possible to practice as much as we can. Practice exercises. Take a time to pause. Create method. Create the multiple one. Create the one with the return. Do it over and over again. If you have any question, like I will say, drop your comments on the video. I'm going to respond to you, and we can actually, create a solution together. So just create as much as, make mistake as much as you can. That's part of learning, and we can actually control, correct, or if you have anything that you have to make point over, we can actually look at it together. So just to sum up everything, I'm sure we have a proper understanding of how method works in Java. Method are one of the most important tools for writing clean and professional code. And as your application grow larger, method will actually help keep your code organized and reusable. In the next video, we'll learn about object-oriented programming. We'll talk about classes and, of course, objects, and the foundation of professional Java development. So subscribe and continue with our courses. See you in the next video. Take care of yourself. Bye. Hi everyone, it's Michael again. On today's video, which is going to be the final video for our Java beginner course, we'll be talking about what is called OOP, which is Object-Oriented Programming. So I would like to talk about a little bit breakdown on what this course will be about. I would like to talk about what we mean by, object-oriented programming. Also, we'll talk about class. We'll talk about objects. I will also create classes and objects in this episode of Java development for beginners. Also, we're going to look into constructors. We're going to look into real-world examples and why object-oriented programming is important in enterprises application. So stay tuned and follow us on this video on our step-to-step. So I would like to start by saying, so far we have been able to touch few and very important parts of Java programming. We are able to go as far as learning what variables are. We learn about operators. We'll also look into loops, and also in our previous video we spoke about arrays and methods. But now we're going to move into one of the most important concepts in Java, which is object-oriented programming, which is basically also can be called OOP. OOP is the foundation of modern Java application. So banking systems, e-commerce platform, healthcare systems, and enterprises application. They all rely heavily on object-oriented programming. So in this video, we'll cover classes, objects, and the basics of
object-oriented programming in a simple and more practical ways. So I would like to first explain, or should I say define, what is object-oriented programming. And we can simply say it's a way of organizing our code and around objects rather than just individual function, if you understand what I mean. So it's kind of like an organizers when it comes to our code, so we don't have our code different function or maybe different method scattered all around. We can, with our object-oriented programming, we can actually organize our code instead of thinking of only about the actions. We think about the real world things itself. So for instance, example like cars, we talk about like grouping different cars under a particular class, and also look at it also in another way. When you have a list of students, you can also group this also under a class, and it might be different things we want to do under that particular class, and we can actually create functions which is going to be the method of the class. Look at it, for instance, employees, bank account, product, and much more. Each of these has data and their own behaviors. So for example, let's talk about a car. A car basically has this, when it comes to the aspect of the data, it has this brand. We talk about the color, the speed. So just imagine having all this, and you actually have it different classes, or sorry, as a function, or maybe as a function in different places. So but if you can create a class, for instance, we can just name the class cars, and we can talk about the data when it comes to the brand, the color, the speed. We can talk about the behavior, the starts, the stop, the acceleration, and much more. Object-oriented programming allows us to represent these real-world entities in a code. So I would like to iterate and maybe talk about what classes are. I know I actually maybe in the beginning of this video I spoke a little bit about classes. A class can be defined as a blueprint or a template for creating objects. In a real-world example, think about building a house. Let's look at a scenario. Before construction, before we start, the construction, before it begins, you need a blueprint, right? A class is like a blueprint of our project. Let me put it that way. So I'm going to show you an example of everything I've been talking about since, so it doesn't just look as if we're just talking and we're not really showing an example. So instead of having this, for instance, I will change this to cars. Yes. So why we do that, keep in mind, like I said, if you watch the previous video, I said the moment we change this, we have to rename the file to be the name of that class. So we're going to do that renaming. So which already we're able to do that with our IntelliJ to help us to rename that class particular. So now we have a class of a car. We want to talk about, what are the things we want to talk about here? We want to talk about the brand, right? We want to talk about the color of the car. And instead of having these, we're just going to create the method here. And this is just an example of what we're talking about here. So I'm just going to print out. Sorry, just a simple printout here. I'm just going to call it car started. So that's going to basically be what I called the behavior. So, and the part where you have the brand, the color is actually sorry, I think I make a typo here. Okay, that looks good. So the brand and the color is going to be the data, while the behavior basically is going to be the stats. So the class basically defines what car basically should have. And when we talk about, the property is where we have the color, the brand is what we call the properties, and the behavior is the start, method that we have there. So I would like to actually, talk about what an object is. So if a class, I'll say this. So if a class is the blueprint, I will just simply define an object as an object is actually the thing that is created from that blueprint. So let me go back again. So a class is the blueprint. We already said this. It's more or less like we're talking about constructing a house, and we have the blueprint. So if the class is the blueprint, object is actually the things created from the blueprint. Example, like let's say blueprints to house design, so object to actual house. Let me put it that way. I don't know if that really makes any sense. So I'm just going to show you an example of what an object is. For instance, we have already created our class, which is basically the car, right? So let's say, for instance, in this scenario, we want to basically create an object of this class. Now listen, object of the class. All we just need to do is just going to be car. Sorry, I have to start with a capital letter. You can say my car. If you're going to create the object of the car, all we just need to do, we have to put the new car. I know in my shows, we might actually be seeing this error, but just for now, ignore that, because I just wanted to show exactly whatever it is I'm explaining, so that I can have a proper understanding of what it is. The car here is the class, so we're referring to this class. Meanwhile, the my car here is the object. So we can always refer to this object of this class every single time we want to maybe get anything from this class. Let's say, for instance, okay, I didn't explain the part of this new car. So the new car is basically we're creating the object. We're creating a new object from the class. That's why we have this new class. So the new class is basically creating a new object, and from the car itself. So let me put it that way. I don't know if basically that explains whatever it is, but when we go on further, you try and understand me much more better. So for instance, we have created the object of this class, and we want to maybe make use of it in a scenario, or maybe we needed to pass, or should I put it this way, we want to pass the car brand to this class. That means brand, which is actually the properties. All we just needed to do, we've already declared the object of this class. All we needed to do is just say my class, my car dot brand, which is the brand in there, and all you just need to do is going to be equals Toyota. What we just did right now is that we basically make use of the object created from that class, and we're able to pass to the property, and the property, the brand name, so which is Toyota. And this is just an example of how we can create an object from a class, and how we can make use of objects of a class. So I'm just trying to make sure I'm using the same screen, because in a real life scenario, in most cases, we can decide to, of course, it's a public class. We can decide to call it from another class, or from another from another class, and we can make use of it every single time. So that means it's going to inherit it. So I'm sure I spoke about inheritance when it comes to the aspect of how we can inherit a class and all the methods or the function that we have inside that particular class. So all we just did right now is that we just pass the name of the brand, and we can as well do that for, let me say, car color. All we just need to do is just say red, and we have successfully passed the the color of the car to the property of the car. And excuse me, we can as well go further by trying to print whatever it is that we have actually passed there. And we can say my car dot brand. And we can as well, let me just, instead of typing all over, I can just edit it and say color. And we can also as well, from this same object of the class, we can also have access to the method that we have in there, which is start, right? So, well, of course, if you try to run this, but because I'm actually running it in the same class at this present moment, let me just better off hold on a minute. So what I would just have to do is, so that we can be able to run whatever it is that we have, is let's just go and have this method. Let's have this method here, the main method, and let's copy whatever it is we have here. We'll put it here so that we can be able to run our code. So if we run this method right now, we're just gonna wait for our project to build. So we can see now that it's just printed out for us that our car name is Toyota, the color is red, and you can see it's printing the string that we have inside that particular method there. So that's just basically an example of what a class and object and how they work hand in hand. So I'll say again, the object, is basically created out from what's it called? Is when we say the class is the blueprint, the object is actually the thing that is created from the blueprint itself. So that we can actually keep that at the back of your mind. The blueprint itself is the class, and what the object basically does is that the object is actually the thing created from the blueprint. I would like to do a few other examples so that we can actually have proper understanding. I will just do one more example before we go into the next topic, which will be the constructor. Let me just try and do something around just a minute. So this is about cars. I would like to do that of students. Let me just put this back into student, and of course it's going to give us an error because we have to change the name to fit in what we needed to do. We have to rename it to students. So we'll just say students. So that, okay, that was going to clear off the error. So we're going to say the string will be the student's name. We're just going to say age, and just like we did initially, we're going to have the main, so we can be able to run it. Let's make it void main. And what this will do is that we're going to basically create the object of the class. We're just going to call it student1, and it's going to be new student, and that will do. We say student1 dot the name is equals to Michael. Just gonna name it according to my own name, right? And we're just gonna say the student age, student dot age equals to, no, I think I made a capital letter, 12, or is a string, so we'll need to put it as a string, it's not an integer. And I think you should make this integer, right? Because we don't want to make it is a number, so we'll just make it an integer. Okay, so I'm just going to do a copy and paste because I want to have multiple students. I want to have 2 students. So I'm just going to call this student 2. I'm going to call it student 2 here. And I'm going to declare this one also. Call it student 2. And I'm just going to call this one name. And we're just going to make it 10. Yeah. So we've created 2 objects of that particular class itself. And the first one is the student 1, and the second one is the student. So we can see that we're still, pointing to that particular class with name student. And both objects comes from the same class, but they contain different, data. Of course, if we print what student 2, we're going to bring what student 2, this part, name, age, and student 1, a name and age, we're going to see that it's going to be different. So that we don't take too much of time, of course, we can take that as an assignment ourselves, just try and print it and play around with it so that we can be able to move into the next topic, because I don't want this video to be too long. I just want to make sure I touch the necessary part that we needed to in aspect of object-oriented programming. So let's talk about constructors. What are constructors? Constructor basically can be said to be the setting value that is manually setting the value. It's basically setting value manually every time, and sometimes it can become repetitive. Let me put it this way: constructor also can help to initialize objects when they are created. I'll go again. Constructors are good when it comes to setting of value manually every time and can become repetitive. So I'm going to show an example of what a constructor basically is, so that we can actually have an understanding of what I just defined now. And I will try to make use of this student as an example. So we already have the name, we already have the integer, right? And I will try, instead of just using the main here, I will call this student. Yeah. And of course, we wanted to take some parameters, which we're going to make use of that here. I think it just did an autocomplete for me, which is the name, the age, and we're just going to do something different here. We're going to take this out, and we're just going to say this dot name equals to name, yeah, and this dot age equals to age. Now we're going to actually create, sorry, I didn't put the dot here. We're going to create an object of the class. So after we've created the constructor, all we just need to do, we have to create the object of that particular class, and automatically the constructor will automatically run the objects when the object is created. By default itself, it will automatically do the running itself. And of course we can, so we're just going to make it Michael Let's just put it that way. And let's close it there. So this is an example of what a constructor is, and what will happen here is that immediately we try to, call this what's it called, the class itself. Automatically the constructor will run that particular class. This is an example. Of course, if we run this, we're going to run it. If we try to run this, we're going to run into a syntax error. We'll have to create a separate, maybe a class that we can actually easily call the constructor from, call the class from, or we can create the object of the class, and we'll be able to, make use of it, and of course do whatever it is that we want to do with it. But just keep in mind what basically the constructor does is that it's going to run the object. Sorry, it runs automatically when the object is created. We're going to talk about reward bank account example, and this one actually will give us a little bit of should I say a little bit of a short test, let me put it that way, or little project, let me use that word. So I'm just going to call it bank accounts. Yeah, we have to, of course, again change this name to, because if we don't do that, we will get an error. Bank did I made a typo? So we're going to remove every single bit that we have here that has to do with the previous one, so that we can keep our code cleaner. That's why we were facing that error. We're going to create a string, and we're going to call it account, holder. We create another property. It's going to be double this time around. We're going to call it balance. We'll create a method. We're going to call it deposits, and this particular one will be double. Yeah, we're going to call it the amount. I'm going to say balance, plus or minus amounts. Then we can also do this here, and we are going to call balance. Okay, and it's just going to be the withdrawal, right? What we just did here right now is that we created a class. Just for instance, like I said, is a real world bank account example. This basically is for deposit and withdrawal. Excuse me. And already I have what is called, I have the deposit and the withdrawal. I have the properties. I have the methods, the two methods. This is, of course, minus equals to, I made mention in our previous video, we spoke about what these signs are. If you're finding it difficult to understand, you have to go to our previous video. And of course, this one is for withdrawal and this one is for deposit. We can make use of these in a real world scenario. All we just needed to do is say, of course, call the account, that's what's it called? Object of the class. Call it account, and you say equals new bank account dot account holder to be equals to, that was Marco, and account dot deposits equals to 1000. Let's try something here. Let's copy this from here. Let's put it here. And we'll talk about that. Yes, so that will eliminate the error that we're having. What we just did right now is basically we're trying to test the class. We have already created the object of the class. We are basically assigning a value for the property that we have in the class, which is the account holder, and we put my color. And also, of course, we try to make use of one of the method deposit. We try to deposit 1,000, and we try to withdraw 200 from there. If we, for instance, try to print what the account balance is going to be for this particular logic we're doing here, just say, instead of saying accounts, just say, let's say balance. Yeah, I'll try to print this main. Let's just wait a little bit for it to run. And as you can see, it just gave us 800. This is to show you an example of a real World Bank account so that we can actually have an understanding. So this is exactly how a real world application are designed. And in most cases, most of these systems they follow the pattern of the object-oriented programming. And I will say this. There are a lot of questions that were popping up in our mind that why object-oriented programming is important. We say, for instance, without the object-oriented programming, string like the customer name, the customer balances. Like, let's imagine that we're having 100 of it. We'll have to basically keep creating this method over and this function over and over again, rather than just creating a class and have the different method for there, and every single time we can refer to it, or we can pass, we can assign whatever it is that we want to assign to it. So imagine 100 of variable becoming difficult for us to maintain. Of course, that's millions, because we know that a lot of banks have millions of users around the world. Just imagine you have to create millions of lines of code just trying to rewrite the same thing rather than just following the design with object-oriented approach. So it helps us to organize our code, it make it reusable, make it easier for us to maintain, and it's, of course, it also make it easier. And when we encounter any form of syntax or any kind of error, it's easy for us to debug. When it comes, it's better, and it's when it comes to aspect of scalability. And I will say this: the 4 pillars of object-oriented, we have 4 major. We have object-oriented programming has 4 major principles, and I would like to talk about. This is the part we're going to talk about what is called the encapsulation. So this is basically protecting the data inside the object, because again, as interesting as object-oriented programming can tend to be, most of the time we start exchanging data, we have to try as much as possible to protect it. This is the aspect where we try to make use of private, so that, and also, for instance, you want to try and make sure that the particular class, or a particular, should I say, property, or a particular method in a class cannot be accessed from an external class. So we can decide to set it as private. And that's an example of what encapsulation is. We want to talk about the inheritance. When one class can actually inherit features from another, which is what I was referring to. That we create a separate class from this banking account. This line where we have our main, we can decide to have all this code in that particular class. I will start inheriting whatever it is that we have in this particular class in there. So I would like to talk about what is called polymorphism, which is what is called one action and many form. Let me put it that way. For instance, we say we can decide to create a particular function, and we can say make sound. You can decide to say dog is barking. You can say cat is meowing. We also like to talk about. I would like to actually speak about also what is called abstraction. This basically helps in hide complexity and show only necessary details that is being required. This is part of the security that we Java or object-oriented programming gives to us. For instance, driving a car, you use the steering wheel. You don't need to understand the mechanism or the engine inside the car. All we just know that we're just holding the steering and we're turning it to the left, we're turning it to the right, is working. So I would like to also highlight what I call, in every single video that I make, I used to talk about this. A common beginner mistake, we basically forget to create the object of that particular class. And in most cases, we just want to have access to whatever it is that we have in that particular class without creating the object of that class. Also, some people confusing classes and objects. Like I said, the class is the blueprint, and all the logic that happen in there, is the object. Let me put it that way. And we can actually access the object of a class even from outside the class itself. So, like I said, the class is the blueprint, the object is the real instance. We can try as much as possible, to create an example to practice. If we encounter any issue, feel free to drop on the comment section. And I will say this: subscribe to my channel so that you can, get day-to-day updates or wherever it is, because I will be engaging the users when it comes to the community. I'll be making use of the YouTube community to actually, post content, to actually put interactive, content that we can actually, talk and engage ourselves, ask questions. We can actually, talk about whatever it is that you feel like is, you're encountering as part of your code. I'll be right there to, answer your questions, practice, and also just to say again, to iterate and to, whatever it is that we've been speaking about all the while. How object-oriented is used in industry. It's basically used in enterprises application, and almost everything is built using classes and objects. We need to put it at the back of your mind, be it a banking and e-commerce and healthcare application. A healthcare system does not really matter. Most of this, system, they basically make use of object-oriented programming. This is why mastering, this is very essential for becoming a professional Java developer. So I will say this at this stage: congratulations to everybody who started this video from the first to the last. And I can say congratulations to you that you now understand the core concept of object-oriented programming in Java. We're able to talk about classes, we're able to talk about objects, we're able to talk about constructor and basic object-oriented programming principle. This is the foundation of a professional Java development. And I will say in the next video, I will try and see. I think that's going to basically be more or less like, I will put it this way, an advanced video is going to be another separate series where I'll be highlighting and diving deeper into, because I can see that I have to try as much as possible to rush this video to ensure that we round up on this particular series and we can actually move to the next one. In the next video, we'll dive deeper into encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, and abstraction with a real world example. Subscribe, continue your Java journey, and I wish you all the best in your journey. Subscribe to this channel, you'll get more updates from us. For now, congratulations, you take care, bye.